Let's jump right into this explainer by taking a trip to a tiny, quiet village in Assam, India. It's a place called Jatinga, tucked away in the Dima Hasao district with a population of only about 2,500 people. Honestly, normally you'd never even know it was on the map, but this picturesque little plateau is hiding one of the absolute most bizarre natural anomalies on Earth. See, for over 130 years, it's been the site of a terrifying, unexplained event that has completely stumped local tribes, world-class wildlife biologists, and conservationists.
It totally makes you wonder, right? Are we looking at nature's most complex glitch? Or is there some invisible environmental experiment going on right under our noses? For decades, experts have literally called this place the Bermuda Triangle for birds. And as we unpack the evidence today, you're going to see exactly why that nickname hits the nail on the head.
To really grasp this, you kind of have to put yourself right there in the thick of it. Picture this. It's late monsoon season, sometime between September and November. The clock hits 7 p.m. There's this incredibly dense, heavy fog rolling over the hills. It is pitch black out, no moon at all, and the humidity is so high it's almost suffocating. These are the highly specific, incredibly eerie weather conditions required for this mass event to kick off. Without this exact atmospheric recipe, nothing happens. But when these elements align, the sky literally starts to fall. That brings us to Section 1, the Valley of Death, the haunting folklore of Assam's falling birds. You've got to remember, long before we had things like satellite tracking or advanced meteorology, the people of Assam only had their fears and their local folklore to make sense of this. The sheer terror of these communities is summed up perfectly by this one quote from a local elder. "The birds that come here at night never go back." Try to imagine living in a remote village back in the late 1800s, right? You're just watching hundreds of birds suddenly plummet out of a pitch-black sky, crashing into buildings and trees in this totally chaotic mass death event. It's so completely unnatural.
But what's truly wild here is how the exact same phenomenon was viewed so entirely differently depending on who was looking at it. The Zemna Naga tribe, who first stumbled upon Jatinga back in 1890, were so horrified by the falling birds that they were convinced the village was cursed by evil spirits. They were so terrified that by 1905, they actually packed up and abandoned their homes entirely. But then, shortly after, the Jantia people showed up. Led by Lakhanbung Suchiong, they saw this whole thing as a massive blessing from God. To them, this was a literal food source falling straight from the sky, and they just catch the falling birds using these long bamboo poles.
Let's shift gears to Section 2, Spirits versus Science, Uncovering the Impossible Pattern.
As word of Jatinga slowly got out, experts started to realize this wasn't just random chaos. The key thing to grasp here is the sheer scale. We're talking about 44 distinct species of birds getting pulled down. We're seeing tiger bitterns, little egrets, pond herons, green pigeons, black drongos, kingfishers, you name it. At the absolute peak of this thing, anywhere from 300 to 400 birds are yanked from the sky all at the same time. It's a massive multi-species phenomenon.
And here's where it gets seriously strange. This isn't happening all over the valley. It's a meticulously precise combination of geography, weather, and timing. Basically, a deadly clockwork trap. The actual death zone is restricted to a tiny strip of land, just 1.5 kilometers long and 200 meters wide. Cross that invisible boundary? Nothing happens. Plus, the birds only ever fall between 7 p.m. and 10 p.m., only during the late monsoon season, and absolutely only on those dark, moonless, foggy nights.
Honestly, though, the most baffling piece of the puzzle is the selective targeting. Think about it. If this was just some general natural disaster, it would take down everything in the sky, right? But it doesn't. Long-distance migratory birds flying right over Jatinga pass by completely untouched. The trap solely affects local and regional birds, and within that group, it heavily targets the juveniles, the younger birds. The adults usually make it through fine. So why on earth does this invisible force specifically take out the local youth but leave the worldly travelers totally alone?
Moving on to Section 3, Decoding the Deadly Trap. Enter the scientific cavalry.
To actually decode this, we need to follow the experts who finally trekked up into those mountains. Looking at the timeline, you can see how this incredibly isolated secret leaked to the broader world. It was basically completely hidden until 1957, when a British tea planter and wildlife enthusiast named EPG witnessed it and actually wrote about it. That caught the eye of India's legendary birdman, Dr. Salim Ali, who was completely blown away by what he saw in 1966. Finally, by 1977, the Zoological Survey of India sent in Dr. Sudhir Sen Gupta to do a rigorous, formal scientific breakdown of the crash sites.
Now, Dr. Sengupta's autopsy findings? Deeply unsettling. When they examined the birds, it became obvious this wasn't some kind of bird suicide or just clumsy flying into a wall. For starters, their stomachs were completely empty, meaning they had abruptly stopped eating at least 3 hours before they crashed. The moment they hit the ground, they experienced a total nervous system failure. They couldn't move, and their basic survival instincts just evaporated. Even when researchers tried force-feeding them, they utterly refused. And even if they didn't have physical trauma from the fall itself, they'd still die within 1 to 4 days as their fat reserves burned out. Just a complete biological short circuit.
The actual geographical trap causing this biological failure happens in terrifyingly specific steps. First, Jatinga sits way up on a 1,000-meter plateau, totally surrounded by hills. During the monsoon, the winds get caught up there and create this high-speed funnel that physically shoves the birds in one single direction. While that's happening, heavy fog and rain just completely wipe out their natural vision. And then, the artificial lights of the village shine like a beacon. The birds, totally terrified and flying blind, rush desperately toward the light and just crash.
So what's the actual scientific consensus? Well, there are 3 main theories floating around. Dr. Anwaruddin Chaturvedi backs the environmental trap we just talked about. Then there's the optical illusion theory, which argues that the fog and raindrops scatter the village lights, creating this mesmerizing, fatal visual trap. But the absolute wildest idea comes from Dr. Sengupta: magnetic disruption. He suggested that all that rising underground water from the heavy monsoons drastically alters the local magnetic fields. Since birds rely heavily on magnetic fields to navigate, a scrambled local field destroys their internal GPS entirely, throwing them into absolute panic and causing that neurological failure.
All right, let's wrap up with Section 4, a conservation success story, from mystery to protection.
Look, while scientists are still arguing over the exact trigger, human intervention is actually making a massive difference right now. Thanks to some incredible awareness programs driven by wildlife officials and conservationists, the bird death rate in Jatinga has plummeted by 40% since 2019. That's thousands of lives saved, literally just through community education and smart interventions.
So, how'd they pull that off? The Assam government went straight to the source. They trained the local villagers to transition from hunting the birds to actively protecting them. They got rid of those traditional bamboo catching poles, set up safe wildlife zones right around the village, and, maybe most importantly, instituted incredibly strict rules on artificial lighting, both for the village itself and the growing tourist crowds during those peak migration months. And honestly, the results speak for themselves. Just consider this massive win. In October 2024, the tiger bitterns, which were a species hit incredibly hard by this whole thing, were finally spotted returning to Jatinga after being missing for 9 straight years. It's spectacular, undeniable proof that the local ecosystem is actually healing and that these conservation tactics are working perfectly.
Still, we've got to remember that even though we're saving the birds, the core mystery, totally unsolved. Even with today's satellite tracking and crazy DNA analysis, we still have no idea why diurnal, meaning daytime birds, are suddenly flying around in pitch-black conditions. We still don't get the mechanism that specifically targets just those 44 species while sparing the rest. And chillingly, we really don't know how Jatinga connects to very similar recent mass bird deaths, like the hundreds of cockatoos that fell out of the sky in Australia in 2025, or the matching anomalies popping up in Malaysia and the Philippines. The pattern is literally repeating. Which leaves us with this final, kind of provocative thought. Jatinga is living proof that no matter how insanely advanced our technology gets, nature still holds secrets that can completely baffle us. I mean, if an entire flock of birds can be pulled straight out of the sky by invisible environmental forces or local magnetic shifts, what other incredibly powerful natural mysteries are just waiting to be discovered in the dark corners of our world? Definitely something to think about next time you look up at the night sky. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and stay curious.